I'm Jack Cox, author of Love Not Fear, and I'm joined this evening with my usual co-host, Paul Simon Smith, who runs the Nutrient Nirvana supplement company. And jolly good supplements they are too. No, it's not done it. Hang on.
You did it.
Daft old dust that I am. I pressed the button.
Oh dear.
Hi, great interview today that you did with Karen Roberts
Thank you.
on the radio.
Yeah, it went
Do you
quite
want to
well.
say a bit about it?
Yeah, it was actually pre-recorded. It was done about a month ago, I think, at least that. So I've been waiting to listen to it myself to see how I come across, but I was quite pleased. I talked a lot about iodine, magnesium, vitamin D, and vitamin C. I've got something to say on vitamin D later, by the way, Jack. And how those four nutrients, I kind of put the idea out there that they're not easy to get in the food anymore. So they're the four most important nutrients, in my opinion, to supplement with for various reasons that I've probably gone into before.
Do you want to segue into that now?
I can do, yeah, certainly. So if we start with magnesium, magnesium is difficult to get from the food these days for lots of reasons, really. One, because not many people eat vegetables, and vegetables are the number one source, your leafy green vegetables. Two, because those vegetables are sprayed to buggery with toxic chemicals and Roundup, glyphosate, and all that nastiness. And also because when we're stressed, when we're feeling anxious, if we're having panic attacks or anything horrible like that, our body burns magnesium as a result. So bearing in mind the last 2 years everyone has had, and is still going on with all the wars and everything else at the moment, I believe that the vast majority of people are suffering with unnatural levels of stress. And of course, because of all that, our magnesium levels are very, very low. So that would be the reason why I would recommend to really everyone that they should be supplementing with magnesium. And when they do that, the best magnesium that you can get would be a capsule where it contains more than one type of magnesium, 3 or 4, like a blend of different magnesiums. And also, if you're buying a magnesium supplement, always avoid magnesium oxide, because magnesium oxide has virtually no bioavailability. It's extremely cheap to make, which is why all the shops in the high street sell it, because it's just basically cheap crap that won't work. And then people go back to their drugs thinking that supplements don't work. So, yeah, you've got to be choosy when it comes to your supplements. So that's magnesium. Iodine, another essential mineral. Iodine is difficult to get from food. You can get it from vegetables, but it would largely depend on the quality of the soil, whether it's in the soil that the vegetables are grown in. In this country, I think trying to get your iodine that way is going to be very, very difficult, almost impossible. If you live by the sea, by the coast, then you're breathing iodine in off the coast, off the sea air. And I've often found that people's iodine levels are quite good if they're living on the coast, and magnesium as well, funnily enough. But if you're living inland, if you're living in a city, you're going to be low on iodine. And iodine is so important for the thyroid. Is probably the most important thing. So many women these days have thyroid issues, as you probably know, mate. And iodine, it makes the hormones in the thyroid, and without the iodine, the thyroid can't make the hormones, and that leads to all sorts of problems, health problems, as we've seen over the last couple of decades, really. An interesting fact about iodine is that 9 out of 10 Japanese women do not suffer with symptoms of an iodine deficiency, because they are getting the iodine through the seaweed in their diet, the seafood, the fish, and they don't suffer with, virtually none of them suffer with menopausal symptoms, which is
That's
very
interesting.
interesting because it's the complete opposite in the West. And
Mm.
we don't eat, obviously, very little seaweed, not a great deal of seafood. So that's an interesting little fact that kind of proves what I'm saying, really. So they're the two key nutrients, key minerals. And then you've got vitamin D. So vitamin D in the winter in this country, you're not getting any vitamin D from the sun anymore. That's fairly obvious to everyone. You can get vitamin D in food, but it's not. I think that would be vitamin D2 and not vitamin D3, which you get from the sun. It's not quite the same. And it's nowhere near at the same level as when you get it from the sun. So supplementing with vitamin D3 throughout the winter, especially, is also very, very important. It's important for your immune system, which I'll talk about in a bit later in the show, and your bones and your muscles, etc. But primarily for the immune system. And as anyone can see over the last couple of years, the immune system is extremely important. So vitamin D is a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. And last but not least, vitamin C. Vitamin C is obviously essential for everyone's health. I think everyone understands that. I would surmise, I think that a lot of people in this country are probably suffering with mild scurvy at the moment because of their poor diets.
Mm.
So, and so vitamin C is essential for the immune system. It's essential for so many things and functions in the body, and we simply can't live without it. So, I supplement with ascorbic acid. That's what I sell, which is a pure form of vitamin C, and I do that half a teaspoon in clean water morning and then at night time. And that covers me because vitamin C doesn't last long in the body either. Now, I'm last point I'll make, Jackie, if you don't mind, is I'm a massive fan of getting your nutrition from your diet. That should be the number one source always.
Absolutely.
But the problem is, if you're telling yourself that you're getting enough vitamin C through your diet because you're buying, even if you're buying organic fruit and vegetables from your supermarket, an orange, for example, a pineapple, a lemon, grapefruit, they were grown in a foreign country. They were then picked from the tree, shipped over here after being stored probably for a few days. Then they were shipped over here, stored again, frozen, kept at a very cool temperature. Then they were put out onto the supermarket shelf and probably remained there for a few days, by which time a lot of the vitamin C has died off in that
Yeah.
fruit. A lot of it has. It's a lot of it's gone. There might be a trace of it, and you'll still have all the minerals because minerals go on for forever.
Mm.
But yeah. So, and you can, with vitamin C, ascorbic acid is powder form. So that's a good thing because you can then measure how much you're taking. And also, you've got the Linus Pauling protocol, and he was the only scientist to win the Nobel Prize twice in the last century. And he came up with a great formula. If you're feeling like you're coming down with a cold or a virus, immediately take 5 grams of vitamin C powder in clean water and repeat that every hour until the symptoms are gone. And I would suggest you'll often find, and I'm speaking from personal experience of doing this with customers and Nicola, my wife, when she got ill many years ago, you'll find that after a few hours, no more symptoms.
How much is 5 grams? Is that
that's roughly, I would say a teaspoon is about 4 grams. So a slightly heaped teaspoon would do the trick. Yeah,
every hour?
every hour. If you're coming down, if you know you're coming down with something significant, then that is exactly what I would do. If I was in anyone else's shoes, that's what I would do. So I'm not offering medical advice. I'm just sharing my personal research and experience of doing these things. And
Absolutely, we can't offer medical advice on this channel.
no, I mean,
Um,
you go on, Jack.
how do people take iodine? What's the best way to take iodine?
I prefer to recommend that people take it by painting it onto the skin like they do before. If you were to go into surgery, that's what they would do to you. They would literally slap it on. So if you were new to supplementing with iodine, if you thought your levels were low, and most people's are, then I would just do one single drop on the skin, and I would wait about 5 minutes. And if there's no reaction, then you know you're fine. But I think it's about 1 in 3,000 people are allergic, and they might get it might sort of irritate their skin a bit. Where was I? I'm being put off by my oven going off, the alarm going off. Yeah. So once you've done that, then I would paint probably about 16 drops onto skin, about that, because that is the equivalent of 2 drops in water if you were to drink it. The ratio is about 1:8. So, and 2 drops in water is the equivalent of what the average Japanese person gets in their diet through their food. So that's how I would play it. Now, I would personally do that after a bath or a shower, and then in the morning when I get up, you check to see if you can still see the iodine. If the iodine is still there, that indicates that your levels are good, are healthy. But in my experience, 9 times out of 10 with people, their level, the stains have gone, which means your body's absorbed it because it needs it, and you need to keep on repeating that process until you end up in the morning and the stains are still there. So at the moment, because I've been doing it for about, I'd say probably about 8 or 9 years now, I do about 20 drops once a fortnight, and that seems to work fine with me. So once you can stagger it after you've been doing it every day and the stains are still there, then maybe every 3 days, once a week, once a fortnight. And last point on iodine is if you're supplementing with iodine regularly, it's a good idea to eat a couple of Brazil nuts every day, because Brazil nuts contain a lot of selenium, and selenium is iodine's twin mineral. So that's going to ensure that you don't deplete the selenium when you're supplementing with the iodine.
Right.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Hope that helps, mate.
And how much potassium should people take?
Potassium is not something that I've ever supplemented with. I'm not too sure
Oh, I
about.
don't mean potassium. I mean magnesium. Sorry.
Oh,
Always
magnesium,
get
right?
mixed
Okay,
up.
yeah. With potassium's slightly easier to get through the diet. In my personal experience with magnesium is similar to vitamin C in that the body doesn't hold on to it for very long. It gets used very quickly. After probably the average person probably about 3 or 4 hours.
Okay.
So with vitamin C and magnesium, it's important to top up throughout the day. So I currently take 4 magnesium capsules of my own, 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening after meals, and it's brilliant, mate. It's a game changer because you feel so much more relaxed mentally. You're much more calmer. Your nervous system is relaxed by the magnesium, and that is so needed in today's world, as I'm sure you know, mate. It's really important, and we're all deficient. We're all deficient.
Yeah. Well, I as you know, I take your magnesium, and as you probably remember, there was a shortage of supply earlier in the year,
Yep.
and I couldn't get any of yours for a few weeks, and I had to go and get some from the high street, and I really noticed the difference.
Do you remember what type of magnesium was that you got from the high street? Was it oxide?
No, it wasn't oxide.
Oh, it
No,
wasn't oxide. Citrate's a common one. Citrate's
um,
all right. It's a good
I
one.
can't
But
remember what it was, but it wasn't oxide. Because
yeah,
I know not. I know to avoid magnesium oxide.
good.
But anyway, the stuff that they sold in a leading high street shop, I won't name it, I could feel the difference straight away.
Well, mine contain 4 different types of magnesium: bisglycinate, L-threonate, citrate, and malate. And they all do slightly different things in the body as well. So you're getting a really good blend of magnesium with my capsules. Very
Mm,
proud of them.
yeah, I'm familiar with the problems with thyroid.
Mhm.
I've just been diagnosed with an underactive thyroid.
Oh, okay.
So maybe I need to up the iodine a little bit.
I would, yeah. I mean, you're hypothyroid, then, aren't you? Hypothyroidism, rather than hyper, which is over functioning
Yeah.
thyroid.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going back, what, 30 years now, but my Dutch girlfriend died of thyroid cancer.
Oh dear.
So, I'm particularly aware of thyroid problems.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, how many iodine drops are you doing at the moment?
Quite a lot, actually.
How regularly?
Nearly most mornings, most mornings.
Most mornings. Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you what.
And
We'll talk after the show.
there's still a light stain on the skin the next morning when I put the next lot on.
Okay, that's interesting. All right. We'll talk about it after the show, mate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Um, Vitamin D is interesting too. Um, I mean, I've long known the theory and believed in the theory that we evolved light skin to cope with migrating north
Hmm.
from the warmer climates, so that our skin could absorb more vitamin D, it
Mm.
more efficiently absorb vitamin D.
Mm.
Um, but I've recently seen evidence to suggest, in addition to that, that here in Britain, our very earliest ancestors had dark skin.
Yeah, I heard this too. I heard this in
And it was
connection. Go on.
apparently it was it's now believed that at least part of the adaptation to lighter skin was due to a change in diet when we became farmers.
Okay, that's
We needed it.
interesting. Yeah.
That apparently when we had a paleo diet,
Mm.
we had less problem absorbing the vitamin D.
Okay, I'd have to look into that, mate. I'm not. Yeah. I saw a little while ago in a mainstream news article. It was suggested that the original people of Stonehenge were very dark skinned. And I mean, Stonehenge was officially erected. It's a composite site, so it was built in stages, as I understand it. But I think the official dating is about 2,500 BC, so about coming up to 5,000 years ago. I'd be surprised if the colour of our skin has changed so dramatically in a short space of time.
No, apparently this happened about 10,000 years ago when we.
Okay, so that would then perhaps indicate that Stonehenge was built earlier, which I think it was anyway. But uh, who knows? I mean, my gut tells me that I'm a bit skeptical about that. But who knows?
No, your interview with Maria Wheatley was very interesting. And she suggests that there were cone heads at Stonehenge.
Yeah, the cone-headed skull people. Yeah, she's been. She's actually. They found bones. They found bones of a Neolithic queen with a cone head. They look very different to us. The ears were in a different place, and obviously the head goes back a long way.
Hmm.
They were much shorter than us. I think they were like, if I remember rightly, like sort of between 4 and 5 feet tall.
Okay.
And they were displaced by the Beaker people, I think it was, who were much taller and brought metal to this country.
Hmm.
Very interesting interview that I'll be uploading hopefully within the next week or so. So,
Yeah. A lot of people dismiss the cone heads because they say that it was all just due to skull binding when of babies. But there are two types of cone heads, aren't there? There are the ones that have the same skull size but just a different shape that was caused by binding,
Mm.
and there were the ones that have much bigger heads, much
Yeah,
larger brain capacity,
yeah, absolutely.
with different sutures as well.
Yeah,
And there's no way that could have been caused by binding.
yeah, I absolutely agree. There's a guy on YouTube called Brian Forster. I think I've mentioned his name before, and he's videoed in a museum in Bolivia. This It's a complete skeleton from head to foot, still survived, thousands of years old, of I think it's like a 3-4-year-old infant with the cone shaped skull. And he points out why it can't have been bound. It's definitely was born that way.
Yeah, we
So
talked all about that last week, didn't we?
yeah, I think we did, didn't we? Yeah, we
We're,
did.
we're,
Yeah.
we're repeating ourselves, Paul.
Probably, but it's a fascinating subject,
Yeah,
and I mean, you don't hear about these things in the mainstream. And like I say, the skeleton that Maria Wheatley found, I'm sure I'm getting this right. It's in a museum. You can't see it, but it's in a museum, and it's just ignored by mainstream science. But it's fact. It's there. So
well,
I'm not an evolutionist anyway. I don't believe in the theory of evolution, and I don't believe that we come from apes. So I think that's something that our betters tell us that we did. I don't think they believe that they came from apes, and I don't believe we did either. I just think that's scientific dogma. No other species has evolved from one species to another in the history of the world. So
well, every species evolves from one species to another
how do you mean?
over time.
Give me an example.
I can't off the top of my head.
Well, as far as I understand it, that's never happened before. That's one of the main arguments against it is the fact that a monkey, an ape changing into evolving into a human, is the only time that one species has completely evolved into a different species.
No, it's not the only time. Changes happen all the time in the genome.
Do you believe that we evolved from apes then?
Well, I personally believe, you want my personal belief, it's just a personal belief,
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of evolution came from a common ancestor that we have with chimpanzees, if you go back far enough, but that there was a huge intervention in our DNA, probably extraterrestrial, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
around about 200,000 years ago. When
200,000, right?
when two chromosomes that wouldn't normally have merged in nature merged.
Mm-hmm.
We have fewer chromosomes than chimpanzees
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree with you there.
because we have these two that have merged.
Yeah, there's definitely been some genetic manipulation going on in our distant past. There's a book by I think it's a guy called John Cowie. I think I'm right in saying that. It's called Silbury Dawn. Silbury Dawning. Silbury is in Silbury Hill in Avebury, and he goes into the genetic manipulation of our species and shows a lot of evidence for it as well. That's a very interesting book. But I would
Well,
definitely.
if you believe in the Anunnaki,
Mhm,
in ancient Sumeria, those who from the heavens came,
mhm.
um,
The fallen angels.
yeah, if you like, and they've got petroglyphs of, or no, not petroglyphs, clay tablets that tell the whole story
Yeah,
of
yeah.
how a very early hominid was manipulated to work their gold mines.
Mm, mm. That's is that the Nephilim, I think, that they're referred to in the Bible as the Nephilim, I think.
In the yeah, well, they
Yeah.
were They were the hybrids, weren't they? The Nephilim in the Bible were the hybrids.
Mm. And
Because even Genesis tells the same story if you read it properly. If you go back to the original texts, it talks about Elohim, the Elohim, which is plural.
Mhm.
The modern translations of the Bible just translate it as God, and use it as a synonym with Yahweh, which comes later.
Mm.
But Elohim, the mighty ones, it's plural.
I didn't realise that God had a wife as well, and that's mentioned in the Old Testament somewhere. I think it might be Genesis. I think her name was Ashtar or Eshtar, something like that. But
Yeah,
it says that God had a wife.
there's a goddess Ishtar.
Mm.
Yeah. In the Old Testament, there are look at it a different way. There's different ways of using the word God. I like to say that it's like using the word club. You can join a golf club and then hit the ball with a golf club.
Mm-hmm.
Two totally different uses of the same word.
Mm.
And you can say the same thing about God. God can mean source. God can mean the forces of nature,
Creator,
or God can mean the Elohim, the extraterrestrials that came to Earth, and we worship them as gods.
that would be my favourite theory, I think.
Well, I think all three theories are true.
Mm.
The word's being used in different ways.
Yeah.
And the problem arises when people say, "Oh, God isn't that. God is that." No, God is all those different things. It's the word's being used in different ways.
And it's all divide and conquer, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. But the story of the Elohim or the Anunnaki, which is another word for the same thing, it's all been recorded in ancient times. And we need to start teaching that in school.
That would be, I mean, that would have grabbed my attention as a kid at school. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of what I was taught didn't grab my attention particularly, but that certainly would have done. And there are so many things, aren't there, that kids could be taught at school that are far more interesting and useful and relevant than what they're taught at the moment. I don't want to talk about this too much, but I'm growing increasingly alarmed at the age of children that are being taught sexual education in school. You know,
Oh, that's disgusting. That is
I
absolutely
know
disgusting.
it's crazy. But the most alarming thing about that for me is the teachers. I mean, surely you would feel uncomfortable doing that. And I mean, at the end of the day, sex education should, in my opinion, should take place at home with the parents. You know, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be so. It's not a school subject. It shouldn't be anyway.
Not really. No, I don't mind secondary school children being taught it, particularly post puberty children being taught it, as long as they're taught a reasonable version of it and not a politically twisted version. But it's being taught to primary kids.
Yeah, well, this was
pre-puberty kids, and that is just wrong. Kids should be allowed to little kids should be allowed to be kids. They shouldn't be sexualized.
I don't have kids, but I read an article in the Daily Mail a few weeks ago, and it's been proposed that they teach 6-year-olds how to stimulate themselves.
Well, I've heard that too. Yeah.
Which is just mind blowing. But what are
teaching tiny kids to masturbate? I mean, it's disgusting. I'm sorry, it's disgusting. I come from a generation where kids were allowed to be kids. We didn't know anything at all about sex until we started to go through puberty. Then we started asking questions.
It's like
We didn't want to know, and it wasn't pushed down our throats.
Yeah, I know. It's like a different planet today. So
But what would be the motive for trying to sexualize a young child, other than paedophilia?
And we know that I've seen images of groups like Antifa that promote the alphabet mafia, the LGBTQ and all that, but they're adding the P now, some of them as well.
Oh,
So it's all being, and I think a lot of that goes back to Jimmy Savile as well. You know, we heard so much about that. I mean, obviously it was a very shocking, disturbing story, but we only got to hear about it after he died. And I thought with the time that, you know, are people being desensitized to that particular subject with all this, you know? And so far it looks like I was right, that, you know, people are becoming, or that's what they're attempting to do anyway, is to desensitize people to that particular awful subject and make it normal.
well, you've heard about the Pi group,
Yeah, Harriet Harman
Unified
was
Information Exchange, I think it is. And they almost got a law through Parliament
Yeah,
legalising
I'm
paedophilia.
surprised they didn't, mate, because most of them in there, I'll just leave it there. But I'm surprised I didn't
Yeah,
get the vote for that one. You know,
yeah.
it'd been like
That's the
Christmas
only
Day
reason.
for some of them.
That's the only reason Theresa May became leader of the Conservative Party. If she has a report, she has the list of the names, and she shoved it under the carpet, didn't she?
I
She
do
made it
know.
go
I mean,
away.
you can read about this on Wikipedia. Harriet Harman, Labour politician. I don't think she's really doing much anymore, but she campaigned for a long time to lower the age of consent.
Yeah, she did.
And worked with Pi, and she wasn't the only one. She wasn't the only politician that did that. So, I regularly post if I see a news story of a politician that's been accused of either sexual harassment or something along those lines. I post it on Facebook, and
Yeah.
in about a year, there's been about 11 or 12 different cases just in a year. It's rife, you know. So, blimey, mate, we're going to get chucked off today, aren't we?
I don't think they're stopping us talking about paedophilia at the moment, but I'm sure they will sooner or later.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But I mean, we've I don't know what I can say and what I can't say, but we know, don't we? You and I know, and most of the people watching know, that the paedophiles around the world.
Yeah, definitely.
They have been doing for a long time. It's not new. It's becoming uncovered. People are starting to become aware of it, but it's nothing new.
Yeah, I often, it reminds me of being in churches and seeing those big, I don't know, either stained glass windows or murals of lots of these cherubs, these naked children. You know, it's very common in churches. I've always thought that was a bit weird, to be honest. Yeah. So, yeah, we're a church government. You know, they're no better than each other. They're both of their records are very poor on that front, aren't they? So makes you wonder why people stick by them. Really, it amazes me.
It's a big club, and we ain't in it, as George Carlin used to say.
I don't want to be in it either. Thank you very much. No chance. No, we're too busy creating our own club, Jack, aren't we?
Yeah. So let's move on and talk about something a little bit more uplifting.
Good.
I just want to talk very briefly and just say that we've lived in, well, not you and me, but the majority of the population have lived in fear for the last couple of years. And although it's been particularly acute over the last couple of years, media-induced fear, I think I can say that safely enough, all based on media lies and exaggerations, as happened during the last Gulf War with the weapons of mass destruction. That was all sexed up by the media. It's happened again now to make us live in fear. Then it was being used to make us go to war and murder innocent people. And now, well, we all know what's happened the last couple of years. But many of us who don't believe in it, who haven't been conned by it, are still living in anxiety, extreme anxiety, because of what's happening to their family members, family members who've been taken in by the media, believed it all. And all I want to say, really, I say very briefly, is if you've been triggered by anything, whether it's a media report or whether it's your family or whatever it happens to be, and it's coming back at you. Somebody's been triggered and it's coming back at you. They're coming a go at you. Just try to show some compassion. Yeah?
Definitely, yeah.
These people who are attacking you are hurting. They don't hate you, although they might say they do, or they don't want to be friends anymore, or whatever it happens to be. But they're hurting, so just show some compassion. I've got a slide here, just a little slide that I did. Well, I nicked, to be honest, because in my book I talk an awful lot about love, and this slide shows that compassion, love, and empathy are related. Now, in our culture, in Western culture, we like to give specific names and specific definitions to lots of different things. It's just the way the Western mind works. But basically, as far as I'm concerned, compassion and empathy are parts of love. So I'm not going to make a big thing about the differences, but just cut each other some slack. That's stuff. My appeal today in this show is just cut each other some slack. If you've got a friend that's going through a difficult time and they're taking it out on you, just show them some compassion, some sympathy, some empathy, if you can. Empathy means that you felt it yourself at some point and you can feel it through there. You can walk in their shoes. But it all comes under the canopy of love, as far as I'm concerned. Just live in love and not fear, and try to help others to live in love and not fear.
Wise words. It's
that's the whole point of my book, really.
It's been a learning experience, because when you what am I trying to say? When you realise that the world isn't the way that you thought it was growing up, that it's very different, and you understand the machinations of the globalists and how they go about doing things and manipulating things, and you start trying to impart what you've learned to other people, very often their reactions can be borderline violent. They will defend their beliefs of what they think the world is with their lives, and they can get very animated and angry and cross at you and call you names even, and all sorts, ridicule what you're saying without looking into it themselves. It's very challenging. It's been a very challenging experience to have gone through this, particularly when it's people in your family, people that you really love and care about, that react like this. So it's been a challenge, and I've learned an awful lot. Maybe somebody that I know has helped you, Jack, helped me as well with that understanding recently. Yeah, so it's a journey, but I'm so glad I've been on that journey. I shudder to think of what my life would have been like if I hadn't have learned what I've learned. So
yeah. Well, this last year in particular, I have grown so much. I'm a totally different person than I was a year ago.
I've only known you for a year.
Yeah, well, there you go. I can't believe we're up to episode 27 already.
Yeah, well, I know. We're veterans, mate. YouTube veterans, still on the march.
I just want to thank you, Paul, because I was making videos before we met, but I hadn't done a live before we met. And you got me into doing lives. You gave me the confidence to do lives.
Oh, yeah, good. I think I'd done one before we did, and that was with Marion Bevington, I think, and she talked me into that. But yeah, it's interesting that I like doing lives. In a lot of ways, I prefer doing the lives to the recorded ones, but they're a bit more challenging, particularly with technology and stuff like that. So yeah, it's I'm really glad for the experience of working with you on this, Jack. Definitely, it's I've definitely got, I hope I've got much better at it since we've been doing these shows together.
Yeah. And you've got lots of different shows that you do now, although you do most of them pre-recorded, don't you?
Most of them, yeah, but I think that's really what most people expect. When your guests come on, they don't expect to go on live. So I've got after today, I've got hold on, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5 more shows this week.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you say it is brilliant because they're really enjoyable and I learn from them as well. But I have to make sure that other facets of my life don't go by the wayside, so to speak, when I'm doing all this, because we put a lot of thought into it, don't we, Jack? When we do these shows, we put a lot of thought into it beforehand and some research. So it's a time-consuming process very often. And yeah, like I say, if you get really busy with it, you can end up falling behind with other things like business and stuff, which is not good. So, but yeah.
So where can people see your videos?
They would, if you just search Nutrient Nirvana on YouTube, 2 words, Nutrient Nirvana. My ugly mug will come up straight away, probably. And I used to do health interviews. That's how it started out, and I will get back to that. But recently, I've had Ralph Ellis on a lot, who's an oracle of knowledge on many different subjects. So they're always good, particularly ancient history and biblical history. And just had Maria Wheatley on, that's going to be uploaded soon. She's an absolute expert in dowsing, sacred sites, megaliths. Just an amazing font of knowledge that I followed her for years. So that was a big dream come true for me. I'm talking to a lady on Sunday called Ilona Woods, who was recently interviewed by Thomas Sheridan, and she does all sorts. She's like a ghost hunter. She's a psychic. She reads tarot. She practices magic. She's into all sorts of stuff, and she comes across really well on screen as well. So I'm looking forward to that one. And I'm talking to Marion again on Thursday about CFX. That might be a live. She likes doing live, so that might be a live. Yeah, so that's kind of like an interview all about CFX, which you're a part of, Jack. And
I am, absolutely.
And I'm trying to wise up on it a bit. So she's definitely the person to talk to on that front. So she's got to 100K. Did you know that, Jack?
So on the subject of CFX, for those who don't know what we're talking about, it's a Forex trading platform where they do the trading for you. The company does the trading for you. And we're currently enjoying around 5.5% a week, aren't we?
Yep. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's really, really exciting stuff.
Compared with less than 1% in the bank, a year is a different ball game altogether.
Well,
and I just say that anybody who wants to know more about that can contact me or Paul, and we'll tell you more about it. We'll explain all the details to you.
My hope is, and I think it's a very realistic hope, it's looking like that eventually I'll be able to earn a really decent passive income out of doing it. And
I came in at $300 a year ago this month. I'm still right at the very beginning, but the big money's like in another year or two. But I'm now trading $1,000 pack, and I'm about to upgrade to a $2,000 pack in a couple of months. Brilliant. And all that's been from profits alone. I've not put any more of my own money in.
Oh, okay. Have you invited anyone at all? Have you got people on your team, so to speak?
3 people who I've invited. You get commission for inviting people. I've got 3 people under me, but they're not doing very much. But the great thing about CFX, the thing that makes it really, really powerful, is that you get commission every time they upgrade. And when they upgrade to $100,000, you're going to get what, $15,000
happy days
for every single one that you introduce. It might take 4 or 5 years for them to get there, or if they introduce a lot of people, they might get there in as little as 7 months. I think that's what Tony Brown did. I think he did it in 7 months, didn't he?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, he's a bit of a whiz kid, isn't he?
Yeah, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, anybody wants to know anything more about that, contact Paul or myself, and we'll send you onto a Zoom call about it, or we'll talk to you about it ourselves. And if you don't have $300, then there's 2 giveaway calls every week that we can send people on, where you can win a free pack.
Or you could smash up a TV like I did and get a free pack that way.
Is that what you did?
Yeah, that was the prize. That was the prize, the CFX package.
Was
which
it?
which I really wanted, and that's what I won. As well as a night at the Healing Sanctuary. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know she was doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know she was. I didn't know she was doing that. I thought you were in before that. But anyway, yeah. Anyway.
No, that was last summer, wasn't it? That was about 7-8 months ago now, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so you wanted to talk a little bit about our good friend that we love and who we know and know or don't know, Sajid Javid. No, not Sajid Javid. No. Who do you want to talk about?
Sajid David. It was Sajid David, mate.
Right,
It was, okay. Yeah. So I just came across this news article. I think it was the Daily Mirror, Daily Liar, whatever you want to call it. Yesterday. It was yesterday. It was yesterday's article, and it was to do with vitamin D. So naturally, I got very interested straight away. And the headline was, Sajid David could order vitamin D to be added to food like fluoride to water. So I'm just going to pick this apart because it's a joke, right? So on the surface, that sounds like not a bad idea. Let's add vitamin D to food. But notice how they tie that in with fluoride to water, as if fluoride is a good idea. And they talk about that briefly in the article, and they say fluoride is a naturally occurring mineral. Yeah, but that's not the shit you're putting into the water. You're putting in sodium fluoride, which is a synthetic compound. You lie. It's toxic poison. Anyway, so he then said that vitamin D is essential for bone health, which is true. It is. And this is what my GP told me. I'm going to just go down a different road just quickly here, Jack. I went to get my vitamin D levels checked. I think it was about a year ago. I hadn't been to a GP in donkey's years, but I thought, why not? Let's just go and see what happens. Because you're allowed to go there and say, can I have my vitamin D levels tested, please? So I went there and walked into his room and blah, blah, blah. And then he said, so what do you want your vitamin D levels tested for? He was very confused. And I said, well, I'd like to know what my levels are because we're at the end of winter. There's been no sunshine for a long time, as you're aware. And I want to make sure, given the circumstances that we're all going through at the moment, I want to make sure that my immune system is functioning well. So I need a good indication of that would be my vitamin D levels. So this is what he said. So he said, no. Vitamin D has nothing to do with the immune system.
What?
This is what he said.
Don't they teach them anything?
It's good for your bones and for your joints and your muscles, but vitamin D has nothing to do with the immune system. I'm not making it up. That's what my GP said to me. Okay, so for a start, I mean, Radio 4 have been talking about vitamin D and the immune system for about 20 years now. So, I mean, I don't want to, if we've got any doctors watching, I'm not here to slag you off particularly. It's just that, I mean, the doctors are taught nutrition for half a day during their 5 years of training.
What's happened here, Paul? But I can't hear you.
I'm not on mute.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Why can't I hear you? Why's your sound gone?
Well, I'll keep talking.
Why is your sound gone? All right, you're back on now.
Yeah, back. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. So anyway, that was my experience of vitamin D at the doctor's surgery, which was a joke. So they suggested, these people that are putting the information out there in the Daily Mirror, it was suggested that vitamin D could be added to milk, bread, margarine, and cooking oils. So I don't touch any of those with a barge pole anyway, because
I don't know.
Cooking oils, if you heat cooking oils, they become carcinogenic. Margarine is plastic. A hedgehog wouldn't go anywhere near it. Bread contains many bad things these days, but mainly bromine is the biggest concern because that depletes your iodine levels. We talked about iodine today. It's very toxic. And milk hasn't been the same since they started messing about with it, with homogenizing it and pasteurizing it. Raw milk is extremely healthy. Any other type of milk is shit. So they're going to add vitamin D to those crap foods. So, I mean, the last thing, current medical advice, this was in the article, current medical advice recommends adults and children take a daily 10 microgram pill between October and March. I just want to pull that apart, Jack. So, recommends adults and children. So, well, that's odd because adults and children are different sizes. So, why are they recommending the same dose for adults and children? That makes no sense.
Doesn't make any sense at all, does it?
No. And I can tell you now, mate, that 10 micrograms of vitamin D is the equivalent of 400 international units, which is
A tenth of
minuscule.
what?
It's minuscule. It's not going to touch the sides, as they say. That's a joke. So you want to be taking at least 4,000 IUs a day for it to be worth your while, to make a significant difference to your health. So from start to finish, it was complete and utter rubbish. But the headline was, could order vitamin D to be added to food. So we're the good guys. No, you're not. Everything's inverted, and that was just complete and utter rot from start to finish. So, but if you read the Daily Mirror, I suppose you're going to believe it. But
I don't believe the Daily Mirror anyway.
no,
I don't even read it for the mainstream media.
I don't even read it for the football anymore, mate.
But even before we knew how crap the mainstream media was, there were certain papers that we all knew were rubbish. The Mirror and the Sun being the top two, or the bottom two, depending on how you look at it. And the News of the World in its day. Because I've got a friend, I haven't seen him for a while now, but I've got a friend who used to work for the News of the World.
Oh, you've mentioned him before. He wrote that first book you did with you, didn't he?
Yeah, we wrote it together. But before that, he wrote another book called Camera Assassin, where he just blew the lid off the News of the World. It's a very rich language. So I mean, if you're offended by rich language, don't read it. But no, it's well worth reading.
Yeah, I'll check it out, mate. Definitely.
It's only a small thing, but he really blows the lid off the News of the World and Rupert Murdoch, and how they used to all the stories they made up in the pub.
Yeah, the amount of stories they made up, I mean, that's well known now, isn't it? A lot of the stories are made up. I mean, I've even heard stories that when you watch the news at 6 o'clock, a lot of the stuff you see on there is either exaggerated or even staged. Staged, you know?
Yeah.
And they've been caught out a couple of times. If you know the right people to watch on Telegram, they've been caught out a couple of times doing it as well. So the world is a stage.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I know that book quite well because although I didn't have any part in writing it, I did edit it for him. So I mean, you just got to read it for yourself. It was mostly set in the Thatcher era. It was how Rupert Murdoch and Thatcher were working together to take down the unions. So it was having a go at the working class people generally, and the unemployed. There was one article I remember called "Fiddler on the Roof," which was about some roofing contractors who were on the dole. And my friend Ian, he paid them 50 quid each to get up on that roof and pretend to be, the thing was completely made up.
Yeah,
completely made up.
You know,
people believed it. People believed it.
And how long ago was that? What, 30 years ago, was it? 20,
Well,
30.
Thatcher.
Yeah, you're going back
Yeah,
to the 80s and early 90s, aren't you? So you're talking about
yeah.
30 years ago. You would think by now that most people would be wise to that sort of thing, but it's just far. It's a lot easier to just go along with it and believe it and not look any deeper, or you know.
Well, the big thing that's happened in the last couple of years
Mm.
is we've started to realise that what we used to call the quality press are just as bad as what we used to call the gutter press.
Yeah, it's no different at all, is it? It's maybe they throw a few posh words in, but it's all the same bullshit. Basically, it's just all the same fabricated nonsense.
And the BBC, I mean, I wrote in my first book, the one I wrote with Ian, about Sir Roger Carr, who at that time, well, he still is, I think, he was on the board of directors of BEA Systems, one of the biggest arms dealers in the country, and on the board of the BBC. What do they call it? The BBC, not a committee. What do they call it? The BBC. Anyway, the steering committee of the BBC. I can't remember what they call it off the top of my head. The people that appoint the director general and the people who dictate policy for the BBC. So, is it any wonder we keep going to war?
Exactly. They're all in lockstep, aren't they, Jack? You know, all the government, the media, the police, everything. It's all in lockstep. They all work together. It's all being steered in the same direction. Whether you're living under a Labour government or a Conservative government, it might feel different, but they're both working towards the same agendas. Always.
They both have the same masters.
Yep.
They're
Exactly
both puppets. All the main parties are puppets.
Mm.
And they've all got the same puppet master above them.
Yeah.
So it's just a divide. The whole concept of having basically two different parties, although I know there's more. I'm talking about the two main parties now. I'm not talking about the small parties. The whole idea of having two instead of one is divide and conquer. Divide and rule. Set us against each other. Yeah.
Yep. Totally.
I talk in my book about when I was 13, I think I was, or 14, something like that. And there was a general election. And one of my schoolmates said, "Who do you support, Conservatives or Labour?" And I said, "Well, I'm sure they've both got a lot of good things that they're talking about, but personally, I like the Liberals." "Oh, no, you've got to choose Conservative or Labour." He didn't even know what the Liberals were. And that's back in the days when the Liberals were liberal.
I was going to say, how old were you, Jack, at the time?
About 14 or 15.
So that would have been William Pitt, the elder, you voted for, was it? Or...
Get lost.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
It's Howard Wilson against Macmillan.
That's Howard Wilson was the guy, the Prime Minister that the Beatles sung about, Taxman, the track Taxman. Tax thin air and tax the air you breathe.
He was the one that famously devalued the pound. And the satire, because we still had satire in those days. It was still legal. You know, do you remember satire?
Vaguely,
yeah. Before it became illegal, before it became not politically correct to criticise the government. The satirists were saying, had Harold Wilson saying, "The pound in your pocket has not been devalued until you take it out of your pocket, and then it's mine."
Brilliant. Excellent.
I do miss satire.
Yeah, definitely. It's I mean, it's difficult as well. I mean, I wouldn't want to go to a comedy club these days because they're so censored. You imagine, you know, people like Billy Connolly back in the day, or even George Carlin that you mentioned earlier, great comedians like that. They would be censored 5 seconds after speaking, literally, you know, it'd be over.
Yeah. Or Jim Davison.
Sorry?
Jim Davison.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of him. I've got to be honest. I don't like racism, and I think he was a bit of a racist. But yeah, but at the same time, I mean, it's freedom of speech. I remember my granddad, who was a trade union leader. He said to me, I think what the National Front talk about is disgusting and wrong and immoral and crazy. But I will fight for their right to say it.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
And I, at the time, as a kid, I was probably about 12, maybe when he told me that. He was talking to me, and I thought, I don't know, that's different. I had to really think about it to understand what he was saying, but it did go in. And now, of course, the ironic thing is a lot of people in my family that shared the same granddad, cousins, they've completely gone with the mainstream and all the woke and all the censorship, and it's just unbelievable how society has changed in a very short space of time on that front.
I think we have an opportunity now to look at all the things we believe
Mm.
because we were told them by the mainstream media over the last however many years you want to admit to, and re-examine all those things, because the people we've been told to hate, we're told we're racist, we're told we're this or that or the other thing. Is it true? We need to reevaluate the evidence from scratch.
Mm. Do you know what, mate? It's very interesting that we're having this conversation because I got involved in something just like this a couple of days ago. As you know, I talk a lot to Ralph Ellis, and on YouTube, there's kind of a circle of people, scholars, academics, people that study the Bible, and there's a very well-respected, venerable biblical expert. He's a doctor with letters after his name, Dr. Robert M. Price, and he's been on all these different shows on YouTube talking about the Bible and explaining how he interprets different things. He's not a believer; he's just a scholar. So anyway, somebody found a tweet that he made about 5 years ago, and it was on the subject of Ferguson in the States when there was a riot in a place called Ferguson. I don't know if you remember at all. About 5 years ago, vaguely, yeah. And there was a chap that was arrested, I think, for doing something wrong. And Robert Price called him a thug. And because he obviously was involved in violence in a riot, and he had a long history of criminal activity, grievous bodily harm, God knows what else, So he called him a thug. He has now been deplatformed from all the big channels on YouTube. They won't touch him anymore because he called this person who was of a certain colour a thug. Now, that the reference, the word thug, did not in any way refer to the colour of his skin. It referred to the content of his character, which was flawed majorly. The world has gone fucking mad, mate.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. If you want to know who controls you, look at who you're not allowed to criticise.
Yeah, absolutely, Jack.
That's the reason I started the Facebook group that I've got, which is called Universal Equality. Is because I was absolutely sick of all the racism at the time against white people. It shouldn't even be an issue. And when Black Lives Matter came along and started all their racist rants that we should be ashamed of being white and all the rest of it, just pure racism.
Well,
because of things that happened before we were born. It's just pure racism.
There are commentators out there that I have a lot of respect for that are strongly suggesting that white people are on the way out, that they're no longer required or needed for the Great Reset or New World Order, whatever you want to call it. And people say, well, hold on a minute, the people that are writing about this and saying they're going to do that are white. But the difference is that they see us as white trash.
Yeah.
So there is a difference. They see themselves as a different species, pretty much. So, mate, we've just gone past the hour, and I've just noticed I'm in the dark.
Yeah.
So,
is there
anything else we need to talk about?
No, I think we've done it.
We've had a good one.
we've had a good one tonight, and
Yeah,
thanks for all the people who watched. We didn't get any comments today, but thank you for all the people who watched. There's quite a few on the ticker there.
good.
We'll be back next week, next Monday. And Paul's talked about all the shows he's doing in the week. So I'm just going to say that I also do a Friday show called Co-Creating the New Earth Together. So please come along to that. And actually, I'm still looking for a guest for this Friday. So if you want to come on, give me a shout. And anyway, it should be good anyway. Maybe you'll come on, Paul, if nobody else does. And tell me all about Nutrient Nirvana.
I think Friday's my one free night of the week, mate. So
You'll be down at the pub.
yeah.
Not to worry. Anyway, yeah, thanks everybody for coming on. Thanks, Paul, and namaste.
Thanks, everyone. Please like, share, subscribe. Join us again next week. Invite your friends.